Hello, everyone, and welcome now on day number 7 of our Lenten reading through the book of Exodus, 40 chapters in the 40 days of Lent. Once again, I express my appreciation to all of you who are electing to follow in this study. All right, today's reading in chapter number 7, after Moses had been several seeming failures with Pharaoh and with his own people, his own expression repetitiously of his feeling his own inadequacies. Now the tables are going to finally turn, and God is going to work through Moses. Verse number 1, the Lord says to Moses, "I have made you like a god to Pharaoh." And of course, for God to make another individual like a god, to appear as a god in this sense, because the Egyptians, what they knew was a human expression of deity. So Pharaoh for them would be like God. So what they're going to get is a human expression of a deity, and that's going to be in Moses. But before he can basically represent or portray God, he's got to be broken, and for the readers, we see that Moses didn't seem to have any natural abilities with his own people or with Pharaoh. He even recognized that himself. But when God turns the tables here, Moses is going to appear like a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron is going to be like a prophet. Now, I'll mention in the honor-shame world of the Bible, what occurred between two parties would be frequently called, in terms of identified in contemporary social anthropology, as honor challenges. And that is what's essentially occurring. An honor challenge between Pharaoh and God. Who's going to have greater abilities? Who's going to have the honor? And so as much as Moses has, now he is going to appear as God to Pharaoh, but Aaron, who's a prophet, what does a prophet do? A prophet gives speech. Aaron is going to speak to Pharaoh to let the people go. However, God reveals this in verse number 3 to Moses, that he will harden Pharaoh's heart. And what's occurring here is some will say, well, God made Pharaoh's heart harder so he would resist, or it could be viewed that God hardened Pharaoh through a sense of plagues. Both potentially could work. I see Pharaoh as someone who is hardened already. He is exploiting this slave labor, accusing them of laziness when they seek for a 3-day vacation to worship. What he's already hardened, and it's not that as if he needs any help from God in order to say, no, you're not going free. But what will occur is these plagues are going to harden Pharaoh even more substantially. All right, so in verse number 8, God says to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, do a miracle, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh. It will become a snake. Okay, so in this honor challenge, as I mentioned, what's going to occur is it's going to be a contest of who has more power at their disposal. And so when Moses and Aaron goes before Pharaoh, that they do, his rod becomes as a serpent. Pharaoh summoned his wise men and sorcerers and magicians. They did the same thing. But of course, Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs, and Pharaoh became hard, his heart, because he lost this honor challenge. Uh, Serpents served as a form of deity to the not to the Hebrews, to the Egyptians. And so here it's adding insult to injury. Their rods made serpents are going to be inferior to God's rod made serpent. So now comes the first plague. Pharaoh is becoming more stubborn, refuses to let the people go. And what Moses is going to do is take the same staff, Moses and Aaron. He's going to demand for the people to be released. Once again, Pharaoh has every opportunity to release the people. He knows the indication is already present that Moses' power is greater than his, and yet now Pharaoh, out of his stubbornness and hardness, his own people are going to suffer, not only the slaves that he exploits as Pharaoh, but his own people are going to suffer. The Nile River is going to turn into blood. They're going to be unable to drink from it. Their reservoirs, their stockpile of water, all of it is going to turn to blood. And of course, you know, cultures and cities are typically founded on or near water. Water is a mechanism for survival. Our bodies need it. We need it in nearly every facet of life. We must have water. And now their water supply is going to become useless. Their fish in the Nile are going to die. A source of food is going to die. And the people are suffering because God's people are suffering, and this leader refuses to do the right thing. The Nile River there in Egypt was seen in certain deific terms itself, and as a source of perseverance for the people, and in a sense being divine and being a god kind of itself, having a god of water, the God that oversaw the Nile. And so once more, God's power through Moses is demonstrated to be superior to that of Pharaoh's, superior to that of Egypt, but Pharaoh still refuses. So, as you likely already know much of the story, what's occurring is going to continue to occur in repetition as these series of plagues are afflicted, each one of them being strategic, each one of them being a God-winning and honor challenge, but each one of those, Pharaoh remains hardened, not only retains a hardened heart, but reinforces his hardened heart. Okay, any questions or comments, let me know. I will meet you again tomorrow for day 8. Thank you, everyone.